find an illustration by somebody you like Kai Nielsen or Edmund Duloc or Arthur Rackham in my case. Then if you have some leftover paint and a little watercolor postcard, then you're on your way to making a beautiful little project. Choose just the part of the painting that you think is the most interesting, because remember, you're trying to find a piece that'll fit onto the watercolor postcard. So I chose the most interesting part, which is, of course, the girl on the polar bear. After I was done transferring it onto my watercolor paper, I start painting in the background with cobalt blue, which is actually just a bit of residual Create-A-Color aqua stick that I had left in my palette. Now I only have like 2 colors to work with because I hardly had any paint left over, and I don't like to waste paint because I don't think that's a very environmentally friendly thing to do. So I like to find a little project that maybe I could work on and challenge myself to use just the leftover colors in my palette. So I had a little bit of blue, a little bit of darker blue, and I also had some burnt sienna and raw umber and just a smidgen of some kind of red or orange. And that's basically what I ended up using for this project because there was nothing else there. So I had to ask myself where I wanted to use these colors. Now the blue is easy because of course I have the sky and a polar bear, and I used a smidgen of red on the figure. Now I freehanded this drawing, but you can choose to use a grid to help you draw it, or you can trace it. Again, I would always suggest that you try to develop your drawing skills as much as possible because it'll help your painting skills. So now I've moved on to trying to do some of the background there with burnt sienna, and I'm throwing in some of the red and some of the blue that I have left over into those trees or distant foliage or whatever that is, because I want it to be more multidimensional than just having one color there. So I'm using all my leftover paint. I'm doing the same thing with the surface that he's walking on. I've used burnt sienna, and I've used cobalt, and I've used a little bit of the darker blue. Because this is a teeny little postcard, I'm doing all of this wet into dry for the most part, which means that I took the paint wet off the palette and put it onto dry paper. The only place where the paper was wet before I started painting it is the sky, which I did first. So when I'm doing the stuff under his feet, or the bear himself, you'll notice that I put on the paint and then I take my bigger brush and blend out edges where I want to soften them. And that's a very useful thing to do with watercolor, is paint with one brush and then have another brush to soften edges, and you'll see me doing this all the time. Now I can go back and add even more color to that background foliage. Again, I don't have very many colors to play with, so I'm using my blue and my burnt sienna. So I've tried my best there to address the colors that I have in the most appealing way on this postcard. I was considering not outlining this polar bear, but then I decided that maybe it would be better if I did outline him, because I would rather use more blue paint to outline him, but since I had no more paint left, because yay, I finished all my leftover paint, now I have something that I need to figure out for the outline of the bear. So I'm using my Micron pen in sepia, and I'm using it to outline the bear and the figure, and then I basically leave the rest of the background alone so it looks softer. So there you go. I took a portion of the sketch, and now I have a nice, very Art Nouveau Golden Age mood postcard, which is done in watercolor. It's all entirely handmade, hand painted and hand drawn, and you can send that off to somebody.